And here we are with Luisa David, a GlobePerson who has already worked for 4 years in Google and now is a legal analyst in WhatsApp. When she was young, as a teenager, she dreamed to do an exchange student program abroad, but her parents thought that she, as an only daughter, would not stand being away from them for so long. So she made a deal. As soon as she finished high school, they would pay her tuition in an American university. And so it happened. She was 16 when she moved to the US, and without relocation services, she did everything on her own. She moved to California and studied in the San Diego University. When you arrive in a new location, it's very important to settle down as soon as possible. And companies normally hire relocation services. So to find for the person and his family the most convenient place to live, which has a social life and close to schools and universities. But Luisa arrived at 16 and had to deal with all these things on her own. This was especially difficult because all her friends were in the beach. It was summer in Brazil. And so the beginning was a little bit tough. But let her tell in her own words how was the beginning and her whole journey up to the point where she is now.
I'm Luisa. As she said before, I was born in Brazil but moved to the US shortly after my 17th birthday to go to college. I had always, I've always traveled a lot. I've always traveled with my family, so I always had this dream to study abroad. And initially, I wanted to do the whole high school exchange student thing, but my parents were not too sure because I was very young. So they decided that once I graduated, they would allow me to go to college abroad. And so I decided to go to college in the US. I didn't have any sort of service or anyone helping me out. My parents offered as much help as they could, but I mostly did the research on my own. Ended up deciding to go to San Diego, which is a place that I had never been to before. We didn't have any connections, any friends, or any family in the area. But I just decided that I liked the school and I liked the location and the weather. So sort of took a gamble and moved there shortly after graduation without sort of knowing anyone. And initially when I arrived, it was sort of a tough transition. I moved in the middle of winter because the semesters don't line up with the Northern Hemisphere in Brazil. So we graduate in December. So I moved sort of halfway through the school year and was, seeing my friends online, going to the beach, and it was in the middle of summer. I didn't have any friends. I sort of had to scramble to get everything organized and to start school. So that was a little bit of a tough transition.
But still, you were in California, so it's at least you were a little bit close to the beach.
Yes. Obviously, we didn't have snow or anything, but it was still fairly cold and lonely. So it was rough at first. But once classes started and I started getting involved with like student organizations and international student groups, and classes started, then it obviously got a lot better. And since then, I've never looked back. I ended up living in San Diego for 7.5 years. Went to college there, had a job shortly after college. So I really did enjoy there. When I first arrived, I sort of had this plan of studying graphic design or something more related to the arts, but ended up realizing that that wasn't the career path for me. So I went for a business degree, which is much more general. And it's something that I'm really glad I did because it did open a lot of doors. And it's sort of a very broad, sort of flexible degree that allows you to follow many different career paths. I actually initially worked in a small marketing firm for close to 2 years, realized that that wasn't for me, and ended up applying for a contract job with Google at the time. They were looking for people that spoke Portuguese and Spanish, and the contract was for a year in LA doing sort of search engine optimization and reviewing content and things like that. So actually, credit to my mom because I was not very happy at the job that I was at, and I was looking for other opportunities. And my mom happened to read an article saying that Google was looking for people that spoke different languages, and they were hiring in the area. So she sent me the article, and I was like, "Well, I'll send an application," but I wasn't putting a lot of faith in it. I'm like, "What are the odds? I mean, it's a huge company, very competitive. I don't know anyone there. I don't have anyone recommending me. I'll send it, but I mean, chances are very low, right?" And lo and behold, I did get a call back, and they interviewed me at the office. And I knew this was a contract; it was only for a year, but I figured, you know what? I'll take the chance. I'll do it. And 3 months into my contract, they invited me to interview for a permanent position in the legal department, which is very much outside of my was very much outside of my area of expertise and my experience. But they were also looking for someone who spoke Portuguese and Spanish. And it was, since it was an operations job, they were okay with someone with a business background instead of a law background. So I interviewed, and this was during the 2014 World Cup. I remember because my first interview for this permanent job was while, the shortly after one of the games, we went out during lunch to watch it, and I came back for the interview. So everything ended up working out, and I took this job and moved to the Bay Area, and ended up staying for 4 years. So basically, my job was within the legal department, but it was in a more operational side, sort of bridging the gap between legal and engineering and things like policies, data collection, what data points were going to be collected, tooling, and things like that. And it was an amazing experience. It's honestly a great work environment. It's very diverse, people from different cultures, different parts of the country. So it's really exciting. It's really young. You get to meet a lot of fascinating people from all sorts of different backgrounds. It's a very welcoming culture in the sense that they celebrate diversity. There's groups for women, LGBT people, Latin, Asian American. So it's really nice that they make everybody feel included, and you can sort of find your own group and develop skills not only within your core job, but also within these like organizations that they have that you can get involved in. So it's, in a sense, it's a lot like being in school. It's a huge campus, it's big, lots of people, different organizations, but it is a workplace, and the campus is sort of like a school as everybody imagines, with free food and the gym and all sorts of different perks. So it is a very, very exciting work environment, and you get to meet some very, very intelligent, very cool people. I made a lot of lifelong friendships while I was at Google.
Sometimes these famous people that we only hear talking about them, you meet them on a daily basis. They pass through you on the campus, and you'd say, "Oh."
I did get to see a few celebrities on campus. Occasionally we'd have, I don't know if you ever heard of the Talks at Google series, we'd have them come and do talks, so we would see them, or the founders. Back in 2014 when I started, Sergey and Larry was still sort of involved in day-to-day operations. Larry was still CEO, so you did get to see them occasionally around campus, which was pretty nice. It's kind of like a celebrity sighting. So that was pretty cool, and that is one of the perks of being at the main campus, sort of at the headquarters. And so after 4 years at Google, I ended up leaving and going over to WhatsApp, which is part of Facebook now. My first boss at Google ended up leaving for WhatsApp, and she was building a team here in Austin, Texas. So I ended up joining her team once again, and it's been a pleasure working with her. She's now 2 levels above me. She's been promoted, but we still work with her fairly closely. And I'm in sort of a similar capacity in the legal department. But it has been really interesting tackling sort of a new challenge, different product. It is a very it's very different working with sort of a smaller, sort of like newer program and building it from the ground up like we're doing at WhatsApp. So that has been a very interesting challenge.
A GlobePerson moving from Brazil. We don't hear so much. We hear much more about the Silicon Valley, but there is, how is the lifestyle in these two cities?
So I actually live in Austin, Texas now. Austin is a very big sort of tech hub. Dell is based out of here. University of Texas is here as well. It's actually, interestingly enough, the capital of the state of Texas. So there has always been sort of tech here. But in recent years, I think with the rising costs in the Bay Area and people wanting to move to different places, companies like Google, Facebook, WhatsApp, and many others have established offices here. So Google actually has a very large presence here as well. So does Facebook. So it is, in many ways, it's a similar vibe to the Bay Area. It's a little more laid back, but it is a big, sort of big, very young city. There's a large university here, lots of people in tech, a very vibrant, up and coming, growing city. So besides the proximity to the beach, there are a lot of similarities. I will say there's great there's great Mexican food here, different from California, great Latin food in general. Asian food is lacking a little bit. I will say California wins in that sense, but in many respects it's pretty similar. Pretty similar culture. It's very different from the rest of Texas. I think it's much younger, much more liberal. And that's probably why tech companies sort of decided to establish offices here. So I am currently pretty involved with women at Facebook and Latin at Facebook. Obviously, this year there haven't been quite as many activities. It's a lot more challenging to do it online, but I'm pretty active with women at, which is a leadership, like a women's leadership sort of group. There are lots of events that we have. We host speakers, other female entrepreneurs, and women in tech. We have a big sort of internal conference for women in leadership. Obviously not this year, but every year we do. And we have some of the women that are higher up in the company speak and different activities, sort of like different learning opportunities. And it is a great, it's sort of a great opportunity to meet women outside of, or and other like-minded people outside of your department, which is something that I really enjoy because day to day you ended up interacting with just like sort of the same group of people. So this has been a great opportunity to sort of branch out, meet women in other capacities in other teams. And then with LatinAt, it has been really interesting to sort of meet a really diverse group of people from all over Latin America, and not only people who are from there, people who have Latin American descent, other Portuguese and Spanish speakers. So that has been really interesting, and sort of seeing other Latin leaders that have succeeded within the company and outside. So those are really great opportunities to develop some leadership skills and meet people outside of your immediate team.
Luisa, I know that you have a tough agenda, so I would like to thank you so much for tell us a little bit about your history and how is your daily life. And I'm sure that many will be inspired by your story to also follow your steps and try to build an international career. So thank you so much and wish you a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure talking to you. Goodbye.